Germany grows desperate, begs famed carmaker to return to World War II-era weapons manufacturing mechanism as US pulls support from allies. A major German carmaker is openly floating the idea of returning to weapons manufacture after almost 80 years, signaling how far Europe is willing to go to rebuild its defense industry. Mercedes-Benz is positioning itself to potentially aid Germany's military buildup, as politicians warn of a growing Russian threat on Europe's eastern flank. As the United States pulls back from some of its traditional allies, Europe is being pushed closer to the edge just as Vladimir Putin unveils yet another new missile system. Mercedes-Benz is actively considering engaging in defense production, its CEO has revealed, opening the door for the luxury brand to step into the arms sector. The chief of the German carmaker said the company would be prepared to return to weapon manufacture, but only if it made clear business sense and fit into its broader strategy. CEO Ola Källenius made these remarks in an interview with a major US news outlet, The Wall Street Journal, according to coverage cited by RT. Källenius stressed that, in his view, it is now important for Europe as a whole to increase its defense profile in the face of a more dangerous world. Källenius said, and I quote, "The world has become a more unpredictable place, and I think it is absolutely clear that Europe needs to increase its defense profile. Should we be able to play a positive role in that, we would be willing to do so." End quote. Källenius stressed that any defense-related operations would likely constitute only a minor share of Mercedes-Benz overall business and not dominate its activities. He emphasized that the company would remain primarily focused on making civilian cars, maintaining its core identity as an automaker rather than a defense giant. Mercedes-Benz, of course, once manufactured military hardware both before and during World War II, playing a significant role in Germany's wartime production. Back in 1937, the company was supplying trucks and airplane engines to the German government, highlighting how deeply it was embedded in the war machine. Apart from Mercedes, reports say Volkswagen has also mulled a possible return to defense production, showing this debate is spreading across Germany's carmakers. According to the Financial Times, Volkswagen was even in talks with an Israeli firm about producing air defense missiles, raising eyebrows across Europe. However, a spokesperson for Volkswagen later denied the Financial Times report, insisting that no such agreement or concrete plan was in place. These developments come as EU states ramp up military spending and expand their own arms production, determined to reduce vulnerabilities exposed by recent crises. Brussels has been urging member states to sharply reduce their reliance on US military supplies, pushing for more European-made systems and ammunition. The Biden administration had originally planned to deploy new US long-range systems in Germany, reinforcing NATO's deterrence posture on the continent. However, Donald Trump opted to relocate those Tomahawk missiles following strains in US-German relations, signaling a shift away from Germany as a key host. Subsequently, Berlin revived talks to buy Tomahawk missiles directly from the United States, showing that even as Washington pulls back, Germany is scrambling to plug the gap in its own way. Along with the Tomahawks, Berlin is also seeking to buy US Typhoon ground launchers as part of the same package. Tomahawk missiles are normally launched from naval surface ships or submarines in US and Allied service. In this case, Germany reportedly wants ground-launched Tomahawks that would be fired from the Typhoon land-based system. The Typhoon launcher is a US Army system capable of firing both Tomahawk cruise missiles and SM-6 missiles from a containerized, truck-mounted platform. Germany first submitted its request for long-range cruise missiles and Typhoon launchers in July 2025, covering up to around 400 Tomahawks. Reports say the Trump administration has yet to approve the sale, and Berlin is still waiting for a formal US response. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius plans to visit Washington soon, where the missile purchase is expected to be on the agenda. Pistorius hopes to discuss the Tomahawk and Typhoon deal directly with US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth during this visit. US Tomahawk stockpiles were significantly depleted during the war with Iran, after the United States fired hundreds of missiles in the early phases of the conflict. In February, the Pentagon signed a 7-year agreement with industry to increase Tomahawk production and rebuild its cruise missile inventories. Germany is seeking long-range strike options against the backdrop of rising security tensions in Europe and the wider region, as well as instability linked to the Iran war. At the same time, Bilateral relations between the United States and Germany have deteriorated since the Iran war began, complicating defense cooperation and arms approvals. The US is withdrawing 5,000 troops from NATO ally Germany, the Pentagon announced on May 1st, following an order signed by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The Pentagon said the withdrawal is expected to be completed over the next 6 to 12 months, as units are redeployed or returned to the United States. Officials noted that this drawdown would bring overall US troop levels in Europe back to roughly their pre-Ukraine war posture. Reports say Washington abruptly cancelled the deployment of 4,000 troops from an armored brigade to Poland, pending plans that were seen as central to NATO's eastern defense. This decision came right after Trump had already moved to remove 5,000 US troops from Germany, signaling a broader and more dramatic pullback from the continent. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was the Army Times that first reported the cancelled deployment, revealing the shift before officials had fully explained it. Some equipment and soldiers from the 1st Cavalry Division were already en route to Europe when the deployment was suddenly cancelled, forcing last-minute reversals and confusion. Some US Army officials were reportedly surprised that Pete Hegseth cancelled a deployment that was already underway, highlighting just how abrupt and unexpected the move was. The decision to halt the deployment was formally relayed during a US Army meeting on May 13th, catching many officers off guard as they learned the news. Army Secretary Driscoll and Army General Larneve did not mention this looming move in their May 12 testimony to the Senate, leaving lawmakers unaware of what was about to happen. Earlier, US military commanders had already submitted plans to carry out phased reductions, signaling that a longer-term drawdown in Europe was being prepared behind the scenes. The Pentagon has not clearly explained how these cuts fit into its broader strategy for defending Europe, the Wall Street Journal noted, deepening uncertainty among allies. Remember, Washington had previously argued that European allies should take the lead on conventional defense, with US forces shifting to a more limited supporting role. Pentagon said, and I quote, "As US forces focus on homeland defense and the Indo-Pacific, our allies and partners elsewhere will take primary responsibility for their own defense with critical but more limited support from American forces." End quote. This move is likely to resonate most strongly in Poland, the country where the US Armored Brigade had been scheduled to deploy as a frontline deterrent. Poland's defense minister said, and I quote, "This issue does not concern Poland. It relates to the previously announced change in the presence of some US armed forces in Europe. The rapidly developing capabilities of the Polish armed forces and the presence of US forces in Poland strengthen NATO's eastern flank." End quote. One Russian Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile could destroy an entire nation, Russian military analyst Igor Korochenko said in his latest assessment. He claimed that a single Sarmat, armed with more than 10 individually guided nuclear warheads, could theoretically wipe out countries such as France or the United Kingdom. The analyst warned that the missile could be used if Russia judged that its national security or strategic stability was seriously threatened. Korochenko added that the Sarmat can strike targets via both the North and South Poles, complicating early warning and missile defense planning. His remarks were made as he spoke to Russian state media outlet Sputnik, which published his comments on the missile's capabilities. Notably, the Sarmat is designed as a heavy intercontinental ballistic missile specifically for Russia's strategic nuclear forces. Earlier this week, Russia's defense ministry released video showing a test launch of a Sarmat missile from a silo-based site. The official footage showed the initial phases of the intercontinental ballistic missile launch, from ignition to early ascent. Russian President Vladimir Putin received a formal report on the test from senior missile force commanders overseeing the launch. According to Russian reports, Putin then reviewed detailed information about the Sarmat test during a video conference with top defense officials. Putin said that Russia has greatly modernized its nuclear deterrent since the early 2000s, citing new systems introduced over the past 2 decades. He also described the Sarmat as the most powerful missile system currently in the world, highlighting its payload and range. The Russian president claimed that the missile's total warhead power exceeds comparable Western strategic systems by around 4 times.
Work on improving deterrent forces resumed in Russia and has not stopped since the early 2000s. Back then we had no time for this. To put it bluntly, Russia was going through a very difficult period in its history. But after the United States withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002, we were forced to, I want to emphasize this, we were forced to think about ensuring our strategic security in the new reality and the need to maintain a strategic balance of forces, parity. That is precisely why, I would like to emphasize this once again, Russia has begun work on the development of advanced systems that have no equivalent anywhere in the world and are guaranteed to overcome both existing and future missile defense systems. We are systematically implementing the Nuclear Forces Development Program established in response to this. In 2004, we began work on the intercontinental Avangard missile system. Since 2019, it has been on combat duty. Then we developed the medium-range air-launched Kinshal hypersonic missile, which has been on duty since 2017. It is already being used during the special military operation, but work on its improvement continues, including on accuracy in non-nuclear equipment. Since 2025, the medium-range ground-based Oreshnik missile system has been on combat duty, which can also be equipped with nuclear warheads. We are finishing work on 2 systems with small nuclear propulsion systems, the unique unmanned underwater Poseidon vehicle and the unique global-range Buvesnik cruise missile. Now let's speak about Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile. We started working on it in 2011. In 2018, these works and the advantages of new prospective missile systems, including Sarmat, were publicly announced. Let me remind you what was discussed then and the advantages of our newest system. Firstly, it is the most powerful missile system in the world, not inferior in power to the Soviet-developed Voyvoda missile system in service with us. The total power of the warhead is more than 4 times the power of any most powerful existing Western counterpart. Secondly, and this is most crucial, the missile can travel not only along a ballistic, but also a suborbital trajectory, which allows it to exceed its range of over 35,000 kilometers, with simultaneously doubled accuracy characteristics and with the capability to overcome all existing and future missile defense systems. By the end of this year, Sarmat will be put on combat duty.